Hey guys, welcome back to the Millionaire Landscaper podcast. I'm Keith Eneix, and today I'm joined by someone who has quietly built one of the most respected landscape and hardscape design build companies in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. A company known not just for its beautiful work, but also for its extraordinary customer service. Jason Kaniper is the founder of Prolific Landscape Inc. And it's a company he and his wife, Julie, started back in 2003 with a single mission that they insist on excellence in design, in materials, in craftsmanship, and in the client experience. Now, Jason, he's built a company where experience and craftsmanship, they go hand in hand, but he's also done a lot of other things. He's got other businesses that he's working on too. And he's really in the process of working himself out of the business. And I'm really excited to lean into some of that. But Jason, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for that great introduction. Definitely appreciate that, and look forward to having some great conversations here, and hopefully inspiring other contractors out there to continue to grow and take the drive further and further, and continue to do good work. That's what it's all about: doing great work, expanding on things constantly, and growing. So yeah, I appreciate all that introduction there.
Absolutely, Jason. I love to just start by kind of going back to that very beginning when you started the company right around 2003. And what was the thing that made you and Julie want to start Prolific Landscape?
So honestly, it always been a dream of mine from when I was a child that I wanted to be in landscaping. And quite honestly, probably went through high school and had a little bit too much fun and skipped the college years and didn't drive my dream to get into the business world right away. But instead, I worked for another company, a great company, somebody I looked to as a mentor many years ago, and kind of led me to getting started. I was actually, believe it or not, I was in queue to take over a local nursery and garden center, but I never saw the end in sight with that owner at that time. He was promising me a lot, but unfortunately, I just didn't know when it was going to happen. When was I going to fall into play and take over that? Plus the income that was needed, the transfer of money that was going to be needed at that point, being 22, 23 years old, and buying a multi-million-dollar nursery business was definitely a little bit troubling. So at that point, I made the shift and said, you know what? Now's the time. I think I need to just get out there and start my own business, and partnering a little bit with that nursery too did give us some referrals and some leads, which was a great avenue to get started. And then from there, it just took off and just kept growing. I had always wanted the landscape business, and it grew from literally planting trees the first year and some small landscape details through referrals of the nursery to growing into hardscapes and ponds and a lot of different waterfall features and everything, and just still growing today into to different avenues and whatnot. But I'd say that probably that year when we decided, just seeing the potential of what I could do in the design world, meeting with clients, enjoying that process, it hit me all of a sudden that it was just time to jump into the landscape business 100% and go after my main dream, as it always was, versus a nursery direction where I was working at that time.
Now, Jason, a lot of guys out there, young, trying to figure out what they want to do. And when you were young, you decided, I mean, you're probably still young, right? We're both still young.
Yeah, exactly.
But, thinking of guys who are maybe just out of high school, as you're saying, and they're trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do? And they want to be an entrepreneur, but where do they start? And you started in a nursery, and that kind of gave you that experience. But what was the thing that changed that you were like, that's it, I'm going to do something on my own?
I think I probably always had the drive in me, but I think coming right out of high school, I lost a little bit of that drive. Again, not jumping right into college and deciding, you know what, I'm just going to work for somebody and make somebody else successful. Obviously, I was looking at it like I can move up through the ranks and everything, working at a local nursery. And then I think it just sort of changed with me that it wasn't truly my path and what I always wanted. And like I said, I always had drive. I'll tell you a funny story. Like way back when I was 10 to 12 years old, I used to mow grass, knocking on neighbors' doors and asking if they'd want their lawn mowed.
Nice.
And I used to actually watch neighbors and realized like, hey, that guy mows his grass like every 10 days. He probably needs somebody to do it for him. I was like 10 or 12 years old and I was eyeballing this stuff back then and thought, I'm going to go knock on that guy's door. And sure enough, I landed like a lawn account and I'd start mowing a couple lawns. And I think I just always had that drive to do more and just take the initiative and sort of that entrepreneurial spirit, I think, way back. And I might have lost it a little bit in high school and then came back to it when I started working for somebody else and just realizing that uh, my dreams, my goals had always been to be my own business owner and be in the landscape industry. And that's probably what shifted in that I worked at that nursery for about 3 years. And I'd say that last year it just shifted where it was just the right timing and things were happening already, taking on a few side jobs here and there. And it just pushed me to make that final decision and make it happen.
Do you think it's a good idea for young entrepreneurs to kind of hitch their wagon to maybe another company to learn some things or just to dive in School of Hard Knocks?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I've had plenty of people. I myself am not college educated. I'll be completely honest. And I've self-taught today, especially. There's so much information out there, podcasts like this, obviously, and many other avenues where you can gain so much real world information. And one of the best places is absolutely working for somebody else. The college degree is a definitely a great thing for certain people. Maybe it's not for everybody. If you learn hands on, I feel like there's so much more to learn 100% working for somebody else because you can see everything. You can get some real world variables, different details that come into play all the time. That stuff can't be taught in school. You need to jump into a real project, real pressure related environments where you're trying to get things done and it's about the rain before you sweep poly sand in. You have a limited window of time to get that done. uh, I think those are the real examples that give you some real knowledge, and the School of Hard Knocks 100%. That's the way to go about it for sure, versus just jumping in and taking on big projects. Unfortunately, you can have a lot of problems very quickly and end your time very quickly and be under lawsuits and whatnot. So I think it makes a ton of sense to work for another company first, or potentially, even with what I know now today, I would still entertain the idea of working for somebody else with the right mindset and the right growth expectation. And here's the thing that comes into play. You can become very successful working for somebody else with the goal of operating like an owner, owning your job, owning it 100%, taking the initiative to grow, 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 just like any entrepreneur has to still grow every year. Employees a lot of times become complacent where they just want to keep working at a job and expecting more pay, but don't do anything additional. I think that being said, there's nothing wrong with working for another company also and staying there and doing everything you can do to promote that company, help that company grow, and become a big asset of that company also. So I think it makes a lot of sense to start out, get your feet wet, get your feet dirty, maybe muddy, working for another contractor and see how you like that and see what you learn, make sure it's a good fit. And who knows, maybe in today's world, I feel like there's a lot of good companies out there that are going to need younger people to come into the business to help these companies grow. And potentially maybe there's a place for that future employee to grow into and take over the company.
Hmm.
So I think that's a great avenue is to start there.
Man, you hit on so many great things we could dive into. But before we do, I want to go back and think those early days because we kind of went through that really fast. It almost seemed
Sure.
like you started a business and then you were successful. I mean, I wish it was like that, and but I'm sure there was some struggles in there. And I'm wondering when it was just you and that starting phase, what did it feel like? What were the days like? Were you working a lot? All those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there were a lot of hours. I was working a lot of hours. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I think that's what everybody does. Like you get into this business and what do? You just start working. And then you sell another job and you get more work done and you got to fit that job in on a weekend and different things. And you're just trying to get that cash flowing and get things rolling. Um, I'd have to say that I things did go pretty quickly for me and really jumping into uh, projects and and growing out of, like, it's funny, I told that little story about mowing lawns. We've never mowed lawns in this company for myself professionally. I only did that as a
Yeah.
kid
Right.
prior to entrepreneurial times. Um, but I think at the end of the day, the struggles are probably just learning all the different details, staying on top of customers, phone calls, accounting. I would say accounting is probably a big thing, but fortunately for myself, my wife was an accountant, so she handled a lot of the books in the beginning, and then quickly she actually left her job to work full time for us, and obviously helped with all the payroll. Still does payroll and some of the pre-tax accounting, essentially all the weekly checks that are written, and accounting, bookkeeping services. So she handles a lot of that still, but I'd say I always had a good mindset and I just kept looking forward and finding ways to solve problems. If anything, I think the business owners, one of the things you don't realize you do all the time is just solve problems. And
Yeah.
for me, I always looked at things and questioned ways. And it might have been part of my mentor. Those couple years in the nursery environment, he was always questioning he was just always questioning everything. And some of the other employees never liked that. Myself, I always looked at it like he's giving us insight. He's giving us critiques all the time, questioning things that we're doing. And it personally, I loved it. It gave me a lot more insight. And I think I grew into the business side of it, looking at that also, always looking for solutions, finding better ways of doing things, whether it's accounting, whether it's financial details, whether it's how to design, how to sell projects, how to meet with clients. I think we have a great system today, which obviously many years developed, but I think that's always been my mindset. So looking back to answer that question, I don't know that I really had big struggles because I always looked at things trying to find the solution. So when there's a problem, I'd figure out the solution and work toward a better solution so that wouldn't happen again. And I didn't really have too many struggles. And I think one of the details that is probably a very common struggle, especially today, is the lack of work. That there's not enough leads there all of a sudden. That
Mhm.
there's a lot of landscapers in the market, and the market slowed down a little bit. And a lot of these newer guys that might have been developed in the last couple of years now are seeing that slow down. And I think one of the things that really helped me in the beginning was that partnership that I had with that nursery, that I was getting a nice influx of referrals. I also still worked with them doing seminars. I was putting on pond seminars and paver seminars and different things for them
Nice.
at their place. So that was something also that, might only get me one job, and it might be 4 hours on a Saturday. I got to hang out there. But I talked to a bunch of people, get the name out, get the word out. And that probably helped a lot so that I didn't have those initial struggles of getting work and selling jobs and making things happen. Because that's probably the biggest thing for anybody when you jump into business is that you have to have the leads, you have to have the jobs coming in, you have to close some deals. Otherwise, you're not going to have any income, and then very quickly it's easier to go back to work for somebody.
Yeah. Now, going back, you weren't installing now you're installing pools. So, that wasn't always the case. You were doing some
No,
planting and
and
stuff, but how
and who
how
would
did
have
that
thought I'd be a
journey.
pool builder?
Yeah. How did that come about?
So honestly, it probably evolved from the design. And again, back to my always questioning and looking for how can we do things better. I'd say it probably stemmed from that and working with pool builders in the area and just realizing there was a little bit of a disconnect from a homeowner buying a pool and then hiring a pool builder, then hiring a landscaper, and not having one company to design and manage the entire project and build the entire project. That's sort of how it evolved, is that we just saw a disconnect there and felt like, hey, our design service just fits right into this window. We understand pools. We've worked around them for plenty of years and understand plumbing from we've done waterfalls at that point, pool waterfalls and everything. And we understood plumbing, ponds and some different intricate systems. So felt like it fit right into our mold and thought, why not have one company that can design and build the entire project and give the customer a great experience? And I think that has really evolved in the last 5 years, especially, is really realizing that that experience is what it's all about. That's what
Mhm.
we sell, believe it or not. We're selling an experience. we're not truly selling the pool or the patio or the landscaping. It's the experience that they get from the very initial phone call to the design presentation to the final walkthrough, and then many, many years after that, the memories that they're building out there on site. It's all the experience. And I think that's something that hit me really hard in the last 5 years of that realization that it's not the transaction, it's not the patio, it's not all those individual pieces. And then that really forced that right into the pool business that it's one person, one company to design that entire experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, Jason, because I would say you have a very you have a cool energy about you. And going back to, I mean, pool projects are not easy. There's a lot to manage there. And also
For
just
sure.
the size of your company and hearing about your journey there and just hearing about you talk about the need to be proactive. If you think about two different types of business owners, typically a business owner is quite visionary. There's typically big vision, little execution. But it sounded like there was something there that just you ticked when it came to execution, seeing the problem and not heads in the clouds, on maybe getting caught up in a vision or an idea, but then not executing. I'm curious, what do you think about that? Do you think that's kind of a fair assessment there?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah,
it's easy to get caught in the weeds with certain, and I think that goes from like the visionary side to even like the opposite being just the worker, the build side of it with a lot of entrepreneurs where you stay. I feel like it's probably two sided there. Some
yeah.
people that are just the visionary and they're thinking way too high and not implementing other processes, or more on the build side where you're just constantly trying to sell the job and go work the job and not really ever slow down and step back and say, hey, what can we start perfecting? What processes can we put in play here that makes sense so that, hey, next time maybe this detail is a little bit easier when we get to that point of the project, or that communication is clearer with a client, different things. And honestly, we're learning every day. Like we're still writing new policies and new processes I think that's part of it. It's always refining. It's never going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. So at the end of the day, we have to get close and keep growing and improving. So I think that's a good point that a lot of people get stuck in one place, being either that visionary person or potentially the builder side of it, the installer side of it, and not really growing outside of that.
If you think back when you were just planting plants instead of installing pools, was there a point where you felt like I hit a ceiling in my business and I need to change, or my business is just going to stay stuck here?
I'd love to say yes, but probably not back then because I feel like I wasn't really thinking, even though I was evolving and growing. I feel like I never really thought that way back then when I was starting or as I was growing. Probably the only place, maybe during the recession of '08, '09, of
Yeah.
hitting like a ceiling and
Yeah,
being
it
a
hit
little
us all real
scared and
hard.
thinking, how am I going to grow out of here?
Yeah.
But I feel like I probably have got a lot deeper thoughts today in the last 5 to 7 years, maybe, uh, than I had 10, 15 years ago. So, and I feel like the last 5 to 7 years are where I really hit the niche that we're into now of realizing like, hey, this is the direction we need to head. I remember telling my guys the one year before we started the first pool, I said, I think we're going to start doing pools. And they all looked at me funny, like, are you serious? What are we going to do with pools? What do we know about pools? And I said, we're going to learn. We're going to get all the training that we need to do, and we're going to uncover a lot of details. But thinking that, even at that point, I don't know that I ever hit this feeling of any type of ceiling that I wasn't going to grow out of something. Um, I think I look at
Almost
things
a
a lot
blind
differently today.
confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, just we're
probably.
moving forward. That's
Yeah, just keep going.
yeah. What about the employee side? As you were developing as a leader, did you did you find a place where you was there a place where you realized, I could probably improve in some of my leadership skills and what kind of changes did you make if you reached a place like that?
So definitely, I think, and still today, it's one of the probably the biggest areas for improvement. I would say it's just our dynamic is changing constantly with our newer generations and everything. So I think, do I have a clear moment or any realization exactly? Not really, but I think I was just always looking for better ways to hire, to find better employees, to train better. And that's part of what we're working on right now is truly writing a very good SOP playbook with videos and documentation very clearly for everything we do so that it's very well understood and develop a better onboarding system because a lot of times I think the hiring process can always be better. I think the onboarding process can always be better. So often we look at it like these employees today are just, they don't want to work. And I feel like that's not the truth. I think the problem is we're missing the onboarding process. We're missing the correct hiring process and we're missing out on hiring better candidates. And too often, I know we're guilty of this ourselves, is we hire anybody that walks in the door that can drive a car, can
Yeah.
show up to the interview, is breathing. Like
Warm blood.
that's not the way. That's not the way we should go about it. So
Yeah.
we're refining that process every day and hiring better people, which makes a big change in the expectations of our crews out there in the field and everything. And from the leadership side of things, to your question, I think reading different books, different podcasts I listen to, hiring coaches. There's a lot of different things that I've done personally to continue my own growth, whether personal or professional or financial, that I'm constantly working on myself also to be a better leader, to be a better designer, to be a better salesman to clients and everything. So I'm always working on myself also. And I think that's one of the things I've realized more recently in the last 5 years, probably that it's more important or most important to be working on yourself first before you start trying to work on everything else and never really fix yourself as far as leadership details, how you handle situations, everything from the ground up. It starts from you as the leader. So refining my own ways a lot in the last 5 years has probably transformed a lot of the company and different processes that we have built out in this company to constantly execute projects better, give that client experience that we expect, that clients expect, and the employees expect, that it's consistent across the board.
Keep on hearing 5, 6 years ago, it seems like there was just an unlock there in the company. And I did hear books. I heard coaches. So Jason, you're investing in yourself. And I'd love to hear more about that. What were the books? What was the coaching? What was the investment or the system?
you know, the there's probably been a bunch of books, I'd say. And it's kind of crazy from like Grant Cardone books, uh, and the realization of different books that I've read from that and his included to Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time is probably my favorite book right now that everybody should probably read to really gain the knowledge of how to grow out of doing a job every day and become a true business owner and not just working in the company. So I'd say, just really understanding the value in reading every day. It's one of my non-negotiables that I try to read every single day, pick up a book and take some time to myself to read and just increase my knowledge anywhere I can. So you're probably right. You've heard that several times that 5, 6 years ago, it's probably the realization of hey, I need to do more for myself. Probably happened 2019, and it probably happened with the transition into pools and everything too. That it just opened up my mind a lot more with clients and our process and creating that experience. So I think it probably all evolved at that time. So you might have just hit the nail on the head there with myself not
Maybe.
even realizing exactly when something transitioned, but it's probably around that 2018, 2019 timeframe that we got into the pool business and started changing our ways, our processes, and bettering the experience. And even myself wanting to just better my own life experience every day with work and home and fun and personal and everything, that it's all connected and being in a good place at all times.
Boy, how normal do you think that is where, yeah, everybody looks at someone who's successful and says, "Man, that guy just made it overnight." And you were 15, 16 years into that change in your life. That's just it happens a lot.
Yeah,
It's almost like we need to keep on going back to that school of hard knocks, I guess you could say, over and over. I mean, it took me years to also finally come face to face with, oh, maybe I should get some more height on this. And Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, fantastic book. It actually was on my
absolutely.
shelf behind me. I just took it down like a few
Yeah,
weeks ago. Yeah, but very impactful book. Uh, and I love how he talks about the personal management side of things. I'm curious, did you also, because I hear a lot of operational things about your business too, about the people. Was there an operational type book that you read as well that that impacted you?
good question. Trying to think if there's anything that I would call operational. Maybe the one recently that I read was The Goal.
Hmm.
That was an interesting read. Kind of not fitting for hardscaping or
Yeah.
landscaping per se, because it was a factory style book about factory processes. But when you understand and kind of listen to the words, that was actually a book I listened to.
Yeah.
That sometimes I read, sometimes I like to just go for a run and I listen to a book, and I'll finish a book in a couple of weekends after a couple of runs. So it's a nice way of getting some extra books in my head. But that was a really interesting audiobook also. It was read very cool. It was multiple actors in it reading at times, so it was a very cool
Nice.
book to listen to. But honestly, a lot of the storylines made a ton of sense about the process of. I think the one thing that I really picked up that I have talked about this year is slowing down a little bit. And just because everybody's moving doesn't mean you're efficient. And that was one of the things, the factory processes, how everybody had to be moving. So everybody was always moving. And one of the points there was they had a surplus of inventory. And at the end of the day, that was costing money because inventory was sitting there and it wasn't being used. So it was actually making them look worse on paper. And they refined the whole process and went through a bunch of different details to realize, like, hey, this guy can, maybe he slows down a little bit. Maybe he stands around a little bit. It's not the end of the world, because then when the next guy's ready, he's there, and they can work together to finish a product in the factory setting. But in the landscape and hardscape world, that same thing can be in play, where not everybody has to be physically moving at all times, where you're just giving them busy work and
Yeah.
killing the flow of the project. Slow it down, think a little bit more. Maybe there's a little bit more downtime here and there to think thoroughly through tools that you need to take out to the job or the next steps on the job, making sure that you're not just continuously moving on a job site and then overlooking certain details because it's rush, 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 and get the job done. We got to meet hours, we got to meet deadlines, we got to finish things. So I think that was a cool book that I listened to this year that taught me some real perspective about just slowing down a little bit and becoming a lot
Yeah.
more efficient with that.
I heard a guy saying that the Navy SEALs like to say smooth is fast. Smooth is fast. I thought
Yeah.
that was a good way of putting that. It's
Was that in
you
the
can
David Goggins book?
I think so.
Okay.
It
I
was
think I
my
remember.
it was my EOS traction coach, and he was bringing in some quotes, and he was talking about the smooth is fast concept. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
It
think
it
that's honestly, I think that's a good point that again, back to starting over and younger people jumping into this game, thinking you have to rush, 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 get jobs done, get the job sold, get out there, go do it and go do another one. Like slow down a little bit and refine things
Hmm.
is a real key point there that is often overlooked because you're just typically scrambling to just get another check, get more cash flow versus realizing numbers correctly, quoting things correctly, and doing the work correctly and efficiently. It makes you more successful.
There's another thing I'm hearing from you too, which is I don't know if this just came naturally to you. It didn't for me. Uh, I should say I I I understood the need of the concept, but it wasn't until I read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink that I came to a place of realization that every problem in the company is on my shoulders. It falls on me. And I heard that from you earlier. You mentioned that. I'm just is that kind of something that you've lived by your whole life, would you say? Or is that something you kind of came to a realization of later on? Or
Um, if anything, I'm trying to grow out of that. So if you heard that earlier, I think my goal is to get out of every problem being mine.
yeah,
And so that's probably in the beginning, 100%. Every problem was mine. I was fixing
yeah,
everything, answering every phone call. Uh, Today, I have many different things in play, and probably a lot through Dan Martell with that
yes.
book and putting certain things in place so that I'm not handling every single detail. And quite honestly, on the build side of it, there's jobs that I don't see other than the design and jobs
Mm,
get completed and I never have to go out. I don't hear anything about the project other than communication back and forth that hey, things are going well. So I feel like I'm growing out of that, and that's been a goal of mine, especially the last couple of years, to get into that next level where I'm not wearing all those hats. So
yeah,
that might have been one of the conversations in the beginning there as far as that detail, but I don't think
yeah.
I don't think I do that as often anymore with where I'm at.
Well, and Jason, the way I took it, like for sure, like the way I took it was really you taking ownership of the getting from being in the way of the growth of the company, kind of more that concept. So
Okay.
if you saw maybe someone in the wrong seat, or you were talking about hiring people and oh, you're warm body, sure, let's go, jump in the truck. But you kind of taking ownership and saying, well, if it didn't work out with that guy, that kind of fell on me. I probably should have had a better SOP or hiring process in place. And that versus
That
turning around and
100%.
saying, "Oh, it's your problem, guy," um, as an owner,
Yeah,
taking ownership of that and defining a better process.
absolutely. I would definitely agree with that 100%. And I think that's something I've realized
Mm,
that when there's a problem, it's easy to put blame on who the problem is or what the problem is. It takes a much bigger person to step back and say, wait a minute, what could I have done better? Or what process could we have had better? Or what things could we have had in place that that doesn't happen? And maybe it's not something you can fix right there on that situation, but going forward, you learn from it and you don't do it again. I think that's the main goal of that ownership detail.
hmm, that's good. Well, kinda going into more of the financials, and I know your wife is doing it sounds like your wife is running all the financials. She's got a background in accounting, and,
Sure.
being that that was the case, was it kinda pretty smooth the whole time as far as things like job costing, what where money was going and all that kind of stuff. Did you have pretty solid financials the whole way?
Yeah. And, I probably, she's very particular for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So I'd say we always had pretty solid financials for sure with we still have an accountant outside that we go to for like year-end taxes and just advice and everything. I always have. And so, but that accountant has always been super impressed with all the data for sure. So she's always done a great job. And I think always having a clear idea of where things are coming and going has always been great. And just weekly reports that I get and everything. So I think it's been good for sure. That's
Yeah.
often, I think that's a major, uh, I know you see them all the time, all the Facebook posts and all these groups and everything. And everybody's like, hey, what would you charge for this?
Yes.
You know, I've never thought about doing that. Now, granted, when I started that, we didn't have Facebook, but I don't think I would have even today, if I was starting out, I don't think I would ask that question because I would have already known, like, this is what I need to charge. This is
Hmm.
how much it's going to cost. And I still, not that I use it on a regular basis, but I have my original estimating system that I built on an Excel spreadsheet. I still technically have it on my computer if I want to access it, and it still works today. And I took that from the Vanderkoy and Associates from a class that I took from him, and I understood it. Back then, I bought like VHS tapes of his documentary and watched hours of estimating programs on VHS tapes, and then wrote
Nice.
my own estimating program, and
Love
it
it.
worked very well. So like that was in the very beginning because I questioned like, how do I price things? How do I
Mm,
figure out how much I need to make? Well, that actually walked me through a lot of different details also of
mm,
how to account, how to have a multiple overhead recovery system, which I still use today to figure out our labor rate and our costs on all of our markups and everything and overhead recovery. So that was definitely a big help for sure. And the fact that I always had all the numbers aligned on the accounting side that I could look and reference and figure everything out very quickly and easily. Uh, Big help there for sure.
where do you start with a proper a proper view of how you estimate? Do you start with profit first when you're looking at that?
Good question. Um, no, I mean, I think you start with, if you're looking, I guess different ways of how we're looking at this question, if we're actually looking at an actual project or the estimating system itself, it's, at the end of the day, the profit is an important number. But I think the bigger thing that's overlooked is the overhead recovery.
Hmm.
How much does it cost for your business to sustain without you selling a job? I think that's probably the thing that is overlooked that nobody knows, nobody understands unless you had a good accounting system and can say, "Oh wow, this is I have a lot of cost every day. All the insurance, all the gas bill, the random things, the duct tape, like random things that you don't necessarily buy for a job, but you just have stock of
Yeah.
that you use for different things. Like all those things that come into material costs or just random overhead costs that are overlooked. And I think that's probably the big thing to start with is figuring out what you truly need to make on a project to recover that and then putting it together. And one of the things I did, and this wasn't taught to me, it just made sense to me, but I developed it on a 9-month system to make 12 months income because back then I was never pushing into the winter. Now we definitely push into the winter and try to work as much as we can. But back then, Thanksgiving came and it's great. That's the time to quit, and you got
Time to
4 months
quit.
off until March rolls around, and then you start thinking about it again. And
Mhm.
sometimes my wife misses those days of having those winter mornings or what have you, where there's
Yeah.
no rush to go to work or anything. But I designed the estimating system on, hey, we can only work 9 months out of the year. Let's design it on recouping our overhead recovery for that time, making sure that all our estimates have that built in, and then putting profit on top of all that also. So I think that's probably one thing that was very successful for us is looking at it at a window like that, a 9 to 12 month recoup. So
Do you think for you're doing things a little different right now, but I like how proactive you are, planning for 9 months, because that's the reality for a lot of hardscapers. They just can't really schedule those jobs into those other months. You think that is probably a better way to come at it for most hardscapers who are starting off and trying to figure out how to budget themselves out?
I think so because the likeliness of that plus the likeliness of rain days, different things.
Mhm.
And I had a whole calculation that I factored in for how many rain days we could expect during the season also. So that again, like you're not losing on your estimating system. And worst case scenario, what's the worst case scenario if you end up working 10 or 12 months?
Hmm.
You end up making more money.
Yep.
So you should factor for the worst. And then worst case scenario or best case scenario, you hit 9 months and you keep working and you're still bringing in income. And then at that point, you have a lot more true net profit technically because your overhead's already paid for. So it makes a lot more sense to look at it from a 9-month window or a 10-month window, or even if it's an 11-month window, if you only end up having 4 weeks off over the winter, which we're probably a little bit more consistent now with like a 4 to 6 week time that we may not work in this area.
Yes.
Weather has been different, obviously, but I think that's a very important thing. Absolutely.
Hmm. Maybe leaning into the marketing side of things. We heard about your JV kind of partnership with Plant Supply, and I'm wondering, was there anything else that was unlocked for you on the marketing side? Today, you're still going to where you started, and you're doing uh, you're speaking or you're mingling and doing events and stuff. It sounds like, but what else is there that you guys are doing that's really having an impact?
So obviously, social media is a big thing for sure, but it's not everything. I think one thing I've realized recently is there's not a golden ticket. You can't do one thing. You can't think that one thing is everything for your marketing, and you have to do a lot of things. And the more you do, the better. At the end of the day, the more you can afford, the more your budget can sustain, the better off you are. I think too often it's like, oh, it's advertising. It's, well, I don't need to pay for that. We got enough work. We got stuff coming in, but I don't see any real return because you spend all this money on advertising and you get one or two jobs, but some of it is just brand awareness. You have to keep it out there. You got to keep stuff growing. And if you can, now again, in the beginning years, you can't do a whole lot of extra spend on marketing and advertising, but we've even ourselves, I tested the waters from 22 to 23. We really cut back on a lot of advertising and said, hey, let's do a lot more social media.
Hmm.
And we saw the effects of that. It's not all it's cut up to be. I feel like we missed a couple years of extra advertising that we
Hmm.
thought we were scaling back, saving a couple bucks here and there. And now we're full force on doing some things that have worked for us for many years and investing into more advertising, more channels again, and pushing the limit because one, we've built this niche that we're in, and we have a certain clientele that we like to work with, that like to work with us. So we need to be in front of more people to get those clientele. And we may not, unfortunately, it's good and bad. And some people might not like to hear this, but we're not meant to work for every client. And every client isn't meant to work with us. It should be a 50-50 win-win on both sides of that equation, whether you're a smaller contractor, a bigger contractor, homeowner spending $1 million or a homeowner spending $20,000. It should be a win-win. And again, back to that experience, it should be a good experience for the contractor and a good experience for the homeowner. And everybody's on that win-win. So one of the things I definitely realized recently is needing to continue our advertising spend on things that just keep our name out in front of our potential clients. And one thing that has always worked for me, and not a lot of people agree with it, but billboards do quite well for us. It's a huge cost, but we get a lot of people seeing us from them. And
Hmm.
so it's one of those things. But again, you spend a couple $1,000s on a billboard, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, I didn't have one customer say they saw the billboard. But then you have friends or family or other people say
Yeah.
that they're seeing the billboards, the customers are also seeing them, and that's that brand recognition. It's, there's a Coca-Cola billboard on the one digital billboard that we're on right now. And it's funny because you think Coca-Cola, why do they have to advertise? Like,
Right.
what's everybody drinks Coke, right? But they stop advertising. Guess what? People are going to forget about Coca-Cola pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Real quick.
And that's the goal that we've realized that we have to keep up that advertising spend no matter what, no matter how busy we get,
Hmm.
because we were obviously very busy during the pandemic as everybody was, and thought, hey, we can shrink it down a little bit and save some bucks. And I'd say that's one thing in the marketing side that I've
Yeah.
realized. And I've always known, but I pushed the limit because we were busy and didn't think it mattered too much. And, now realizing like, hey, no, we need to stay in front of our clients at
Hmm.
all times and keep that brand awareness growing.
That's an interesting avenue. Don't hear that every day. Billboards.
I
I
know.
like it.
And I've talked to
What?
several people that have said it. I
Yeah.
don't see it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But you can't here's the thing. I'll tell you, you can't get into it lightly. So I just signed a 52-week contract 2 weeks ago. So if you're not going to do it for a long term, it's not worth it.
Yeah. Got to go all
It's
in.
got to be, yeah, because you got to be in front of people because you never know when they're going to see it and how often they're going to see it. So if you're only going to do it for a month or two, it's not worth the investment.
Hmm.
But my goal,
Makes
what I've
sense.
always done for leading up to 23, I had the same boards in one main corridor for probably a solid like 5, 6 years, I'd say.
Hmm.
And we saw the rewards of that. And then I cut it off. And, part of my, you know, let's be honest, the economy's changed a little bit here too. So that
Yeah.
might be part of it. But I don't want to rely on that's the answer because we have customers spending a lot of money. We have customers spending on projects all the time. There may not be as many as we had during 22, 23, but they're still out there. So that's
Mm.
why the realization like, hey, they're out there and there's other contractors that are working for them also. So
Yes.
we need to stay in front of people more and sell our experience and show them who we are every day to understand what we bring to the table.
That's great. I like that, leaning into billboards. Would you say, as far as the lowest cost per acquisition channel for a new lead to come in, do you is there one that comes to mind, another one that you're doing aside from
Yeah,
billboards?
social media. I mean, social
Okay.
media is
Yeah.
free if you don't want to boost
Yeah.
any ads, if you don't want to do any paid ads. Like social media is free. Why not do it and just gain followers in the local community? So it
Yeah.
takes a little bit of work. Again, it's a little bit of work, but technically, when I started social media, I was doing it myself
Yeah.
and just grabbing pictures from job sites when I was out there. Take a picture, post a quick story, uh, take a video, post a quick reel, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it out there. And repetition is everything. Just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and get them out there. And I think again, it's one of those things that you're not going to see instant. You're going to do it for a month or two, and then say, yeah, I didn't get a single job. And that thought has to get out of your head with marketing.
Right.
It's something you just have to keep doing it. And there's nothing you can do to, like I said before, there's no golden ticket. There's not something that you can just say, hey, I'm going to spend 10,000 here and I'm going to get $1 million worth of work. It's not going to happen.
Mm.
I really think you have to be everywhere as much as you can. And again, it's to each person what they can truly do. But if you can do it, I think the more you do, the better. And the more consistent you are, the better. I think
Mm.
consistency is a big key missing factor also is you try to do it here, or you do it when I've had plenty of contractors that advertise when they're slow and then they get busy. And even myself, obviously, I just told you I did that in 22 and 23 and said, hey, let's slow
Yeah.
down a little bit. And probably wasn't the right decision. And
Yeah.
the goal is to just keep advertising. You have to keep it coming in. And what's the worst that happens? You have too many leads. Well, guess what? Now you get to decipher and you pick the better ones. So it's not the end of the world to keep that growing.
Hmm. Do you look at different months differently, the different cycles, like busy season starting in May? Do you push the gas pedal down more, or do you kind of see your marketing budget a little different, or do you just kind of spread it across the full year?
So I always have a little bit heavier in the springtime into summer.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you one thing that I can't figure out right now, but our demographic, something's changed. So spring always
Yeah.
used to be the crazy busy time. We're busier the last 2 years in July through probably this time of year, I'd say, which is insane. I don't quite understand
Yeah.
why that changed because everybody thinks springtime, like that's when you get outside. You start thinking about, oh, I want the pool, I want the patio, oh, my yard's a mess. I need to call a landscaper. But the last 2 years, it's changed. So now I'm all over the place with my thoughts on that marketing timeframe window.
What actually works?
I, I know, so I'm kind of lost right now on that question because I feel like I had it dialed in. I knew to put it in perspective. I kid you not. 2 weeks after the last cold spell or snow on the ground, 2 weeks after that, one sunny weekend, 2 weeks after, I guarantee you the phone was ringing off the hook in spring. That's the way it
Yeah.
was for so many years. We get to June, kids get out of school, graduations happen, boom, it goes downhill. July is usually a dead month. You're wondering, hey, is the phone working? Like nobody's calling. And then all of a sudden, August would pick up again, September would pick up, October a little bit would start to slow down, and then November, December would be dead. That, I
Hmm.
kid you not, that was my plan for many, many years. That was just from tracking details, that was the flow. Last 2 years, it it's like all over the place. I can't figure it out. I can't map anything out because it's not consistent with the traditional flow that we've always had. So, but I always had in the past tried to spend a little bit more during certain times of the busy time, spring into summer, and then again into fall. But right now, because of the details of the last 2 years, plus just probably leading up to 2 years ago, also, I just said, hey, let's do it consistently year round. So I'm back to
Hmm.
that plan of,
Yeah.
I think the better thing is people forget quick. You don't realize how quickly people forget about you. I mean, let's be honest, people have a
Yeah.
2 week memory sometimes with certain details.
Yeah.
So, and they might be talking to their friend that just got an awesome pool put in or a patio or what have you. So I think it's very important to stay in front of people as much as you can. So the advertising obviously is meant to stay in front of people at all times. So again, if the budget allows, I think advertising year round is probably the better bet.
Hmm. Jason, your advertising, but also just your sales process. You've got a world-class sales and design process that you walk your customers through. Could you kind of go into that just a little bit and help us understand how you
Sure.
started and how that adjusted over the years and why you're where you're at today with that process?
So again, things have changed a lot in the last couple of years. I'd say in the beginning, it wasn't as dialed in, probably more like everybody else, where phone rings, you go out, you look at the job, you give everybody an estimate, no matter what. And you barely find out budgets, you barely get enough information. You're just listening to what they say, and okay, you want that? All right, got it. And you design that, and then sometimes you waste a ton of time because you really don't get into the value of what they want. And I think the main detail that's shifted for me is charging for design and not doing designs for free, which everybody listening to this needs to
Yeah.
start charging for design. It's, I don't
Mm.
know if this is the right thing to say or not, but I feel like it's one of the stupidest things in our industry that we do designs for free. We
Hmm.
are a professional industry doing world-class projects, patios, pools, landscaping, no matter what you're doing in this industry. Why are we not known as a professional organization that customers should want to pay for that design? So that's probably the biggest thing that I forced. And again, it probably goes back to that 5 to 7 year mark that I started charging for designs. I started charging first for consultations. And then when I got out there, I'd tell them, hey, there's an additional fee for design work. This project definitely needs a design. And now we don't even go that far. Typically, the process is a discovery call. After that discovery call,
Yeah.
they already know everything. I know everything about them. They know enough about us, and we're going to move forward with design. Or they might say, hey, that nobody else is charging, so I'm going to go somewhere else. That that sucks to hear, but
Yeah.
they might not be our customer anyway. So I might have wasted all this free time, go
Hmm.
out there, do a design, and then waste all this time, and they don't sign up anyway. So I may lose some calls at that point that we don't go any further at that juncture. But what it has allowed me to do is perfect the process. And when I get the clients that want to move forward with a paid design, meet them out there on site. We do a great concept consultation, walk through the details. Plus, I already have a ton of questions answered. So we can dive right into details and really get to know them, understand what they see as value, what they don't see as value, and come up with a great design. And then from there, I have a great process where we bring them into our design studio where I can present the design to them in 3D on a big screen in front of them. We sit at a big granite countertop bar and hang out in some nice comfy
Nice.
chairs and look at the design presentation. I've had people super emotional during those meetings to
Mm.
excited, ecstatic, to even tears of joy when they see their design come
Mm.
through. And then we can have great communication right there, reviewing the design, reviewing the estimate, and potentially signing off on everything right then and there also, or maybe we make a few
Yeah.
revisions, talk about a few revisions needed. But that sales process dialed in from the discovery call first, then the design concept meeting to a design presentation meeting has won us a lot of projects. And we close a lot of great deals with clients that are over what they ever imagined in a sense, and excited about the project and loving every minute of it. Again, back to that experience, that starts the experience. Then when the
Mhm.
build goes through, we've gotten everything ironed out, that the build is actually sometimes the easier part for the customer and for the design office at that point, because everything's mapped out and the guys know what they're doing. They have a clear visual. They have 3D plus construction drawings. The customer has their 3D visuals plus 2D design and can understand everything. And everybody can just, the guys can work in the field and the customer can see everything finished pretty much to fruition, just like they expected with that design, which is really cool. So I think that sales process has made us really successful in from the beginning to the end of that process.
Yeah. Oh, it makes sense. Man, so there might be, again, kind of slowing down to speed up a little bit, right? That's the, I want to close the job, but maybe stepping back a little bit and asking, well, am I, there's a lot left on the table by not bringing them through the right process. You could actually sell a lot larger job, which means you don't have to do as many
Every day.
jobs. And,
Exactly.
and yeah, so, that's interesting. Kind of, I hear also niching. It's like you figured out what you're good at, and instead of just doing a ton of stuff, you figured that out, and then you just got better at it.
Absolutely.
It's kind of amazing to me how many guys are doing these incredible artistic installs, but they don't lean into the fact that they're an artist and present that to people in image. So social media, like, it could put up
Absolutely.
images put up images of your work on social media. It's your art. People work for you because you do great art, but also in the experience to ensure that they see the great art you can implement for them. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've done. You've just brought them through
Absolutely.
that
And again,
process.
elevating that experience for the client, that you're not just rushing to do a quick sketch and figuring it out later. I've heard that so many times that from other employees that work for other contracting firms, actually, that I might have interviewed, that have complained about their process at their company because they rush through the design process and then they have to figure it out on job site. So
Mm,
rush, rush, rush to
yeah.
get the job sold. If you just slow it down a little bit, and here's the thing, if everybody slows it down a little bit and everybody says, hey, let's all start charging for design, guess what? The customers are going to have no
Mhm.
option other than to say, all right, well, let's pick the
Yeah.
one we want to work with. Let's pick the company that has the best reviews. Let's pick the company that has the best process. Let's analyze the company before we call five and get estimates, and then analyze estimates that they have no idea how to analyze an estimate. And now all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you're comparing numbers and you're just, oh, let's go with this one. It's the cheapest. Or this one's in the middle of the road, so let's go with
Yeah.
that one. When sometimes the cheaper one might be the best one, and sometimes the most expensive one might not be. But unfortunately, if that's your only tool to decipher who to choose, it's really not a good way of choosing a contractor from a customer standpoint. So if the customer now knows, like, hey, we have to choose who we want first, and then we're going to pay for that design, they should already know they should be invested, and then the process will unfold correctly. And that way you get rid of those tire kickers, you get rid of the people that are getting five estimates, 10 estimates. Sometimes I wonder how that happens, where somebody gets five or 10 estimates. Like, I can't stand when I have to review two or three estimates that are bids for one of our projects or something. It's a lot of stuff I got to go through, let alone a homeowner
Yeah.
that has no understanding of construction details, and they're trying to decide who's the better avenue at that point, versus doing a little bit of research on the front side before you even get to design or numbers. Makes a ton of sense. So I think that's something that I really hope the industry starts to adopt and change. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that are doing design work and charging for it, but there's still a ton that are not. And it's unfortunate because even in home construction, home remodeling, I think there too, there's a need for us to elevate our services, and everybody should be charging up front. There's no reason not to charge. You have expertise. You're being paid for your expertise. Just like an
That's
attorney,
good.
just like a doctor.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I went to the doctor the other day. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but real quick, I went to the doctor and then I came home and I wasn't happy with my answers, and I checked Chat GPT and I got a better answer. And kind of
Oh,
crazy that,
yeah.
you know, and we're paying doctors and we're paying
Amazing.
attorneys and we're paying all these professional services. I'm not trying to put down doctors or anything like that. But what I'm
Yeah.
getting at is, why are we not getting paid for our services when we're artists, like you said?
Right.
Uh, our experience in the
Yes.
construction trade to build a patio that doesn't fall apart in a year, like that's not something that you can just do. It takes time to understand that. It takes research and development or education that you get through the School of Hard Knocks. So that's all, in my
Yes.
opinion, that should all be paid for. That's what you're charging the client for, that experience.
Love it. I love it. Well, Jason, I know we're getting close to time here, but you mentioned a few times that you read the book Buy Back Your Time. And I'm just curious, what are a couple things you're trying to do now to get there? Like what's next for you over this next year?
So I think I'm climbing a ladder. If you read that book, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm on the marketing run right now. And it's funny because one of the things that book taught me is, right away you think, oh, I need to hire a designer. Oh, I need to hire a salesperson. I need to hire this. I need to hire that. And the amazing thing about that book is, I'm like, no, no, no. Whoa, slow down. Start at the bottom and hire the small tasks, get them out first, and start building up this ladder appropriately with the right systems and processes. So I'm at the marketing detail right now, where I'm hoping to build that up and sort of pass that off, and then move on to the sales side of it, and pass off the main sales role essentially, and then start running
Nice.
the company more as a leader, and growing from there. So. And I think
Love it.
the one thing that I'd bring up about you know things I've learned here would be really focusing attention on uh, following one course until successful. So I think that's my favorite
I love that.
acronym,
Focus.
and most
Yeah.
people overlook that detail. And it's so important to
Mm,
just stay the course and don't give up. Like, you kind of, it's so easy to say, oh, something's not working, and give up, but instead just follow that one course until successful is huge.
I'm wondering if that's the big takeaway or if there's another one. You think of hardscapers who are out there, they're looking up saying, hey, how's this guy at over a million or multi seven figures? And there's so many different things to focus on. Is that kind of a really good big takeaway for that guy who's maybe just at 300,000 a year and trying to figure out what to do next?
Yeah, I think even to that point of where I'm at, thinking about replacing small tasks on my daily list. Same thing. Like, look at perfecting what you're doing first. And if right now you're just a one man operation of two or three guys, and you're selling the job and going out and laying pavers, really perfect every part of that before you think about growing into, like, hey, I'm going to take on this task or that task, and add all these additional projects into your scope versus perfecting one of them first. And if anything, I probably grew that way myself, where I started to branch out, and now I've really refined it down to what I would call a perfect niche of where we're at today with everything we do. And granted, we do a lot of different things with the pool, the patio, landscaping. We've built additions and houses and different things. So we've done a lot of different projects, but overall, it's all revolving around that design and being a design first focused company. So I'd say that's probably a
I
great
love it.
takeaway, is really
Yeah.
focusing attention on what you're working on and getting that as good as you can get it to be successful, and then grow to the next level
Yeah.
versus jumping the gun right away.
It's good. Jason, this has been really good. Thank you for dropping these gold nuggets for us. I just want
Awesome.
to wrap up with kind of where people can find you. What's the best place for them to connect with you?
So they can definitely follow me on Instagram for sure. Is probably a great spot where I'm dropping a lot of nuggets all the time for sure. That's Jason Kaniper. Very easy to find. So keep it simple and find that name easily and follow along. So definitely appreciate the follows for sure.
Well, sure been a pleasure to have you here. Guys, thanks for joining in today for the Millionaire Landscaper podcast, where we turn dirt into dollars. And we'll catch you guys next week.